Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today is International Women's Day, and I'm very pleased to say that we've got an amazing group of business leaders across hospitality, leisure and retail who have joined us today from the UK, Zurich and Dubai. So we're going to get straight into our 45-minute conversation about female empowerment and women's economic empowerment, which is the topic of International Women's Day this year. Now, if you're watching this live, then you can put any questions or comments into the sidebar on your right-hand side, and we'll try to pose those questions to the panelists as well. If you're watching this on record, then sit back, relax, and listen to the conversation. I'm going to start off by asking Juliett to introduce herself and then get into a little bit about what you do around female mentoring. On to you, Juliett.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Juliett Cattermole, Group People Director for David Lloyd Clubs. Been with David Lloyd Clubs about 16 months now, so quite short. I've spent 30 years in the HR field with British Airways, Mitchells and Butlers, Papa John's, and now David Lloyd Clubs. So various different sectors in hospitality, leisure, and retail. Mentoring for me is significantly important when it comes to female mentoring. And I guess the reason for that is I think when I was growing up in my career, I didn't see anybody that I could aspire to be like. I didn't see any females in roles that were at the level that I'm operating at the moment. And I think my turning point was probably 2010, around that time, when I was invited to join a women's speed dating event. And I remember walking into the room and seeing all these senior women operating at the level I now operate at, thinking, God, I've actually got somebody to aspire to, and I know where I want to be, and that's an absolute aspiration of mine. So my passion for female mentoring really kicked in at that point. We do an awful lot with different organisations to ensure that we have a pipeline of women coming through in our organisation, and we do that through external research, external mentoring. We do a lot of internal mentoring because we've got a workforce of 53% of our workforce are females. So we really want to make sure that we've got females coming through into all different roles in our organisation. So I'm particularly interested and do an awful lot of work myself externally to mentor females.
Excellent, Juliett. Thank you very much for being with us. Have you been mentored by females in turn?
I have. Yeah, one of my turning points was actually in, I think it was 2012. I got mentored by an amazing lady called Ashleen Kemp, who's the CEO of JDM Food Group, who really changed my perspectives. And I remember her saying to me, Juliett, you've got to think broader, not just in the HR field. You've got to really think commercially. And that was absolutely my turning point. And I don't think without her, I'd be in the role that I'm in now.
And a lot of people who speak to us about mentorship kind of talk about kind of like what the mentee gets out of it. But as a mentor, can you give us some guidance as to kind of like, because it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah, it is. And I've been really lucky to mentor so many different women. And I think the area of ethnic diversity, I've absolutely mentored women from ethnic groups. And for me, I've got an awful lot out of those relationships because I've learned so much about different cultures, different religions, different customs and practices that I would never have known before. So it absolutely is a two-way street.
Excellent, Juliett. Thank you very much for being with us. Much appreciated. Now, next, just to sticking with that kind of like, females from underrepresented groups, I think Karen specifically, you've been doing some work in that area that I think it'd be really interesting to bring you in on at this time.
Thank you. Yes. If I just introduce myself, I'm Karen Green. My business Buyerology is actually refers to my book Buyerology, Know Your Buyer, Sell More and Sell Better, which has come from a career of being in commercial. So I started life as a buyer at Tesco and Boots, and then went across the table to work as a salesperson. For the last 8 years, I've been working with food companies, mostly startups and sort of second stage SMEs, helping them to extend their sales by getting into big brand distribution, whether that's Selfridges, Tesco, or even we've had Burger King recently as well. And it's interesting to listen to what Juliett was saying about actually just touching on the mentoring piece, because my business within this food industry is called Food Mentor, and I do work with a lot of women with diverse ethnic backgrounds. I don't specifically go out to market to that target group, but that is my customer client base. They come to me, and I think women of color are very open to getting the support and to working with you to move forward. I also do some work. I'm a UK sales advisor for United Nations International Trade Centre, and we have a variety of different companies from different countries that we work with, and one in particular is Claudia from Eswatini, and she's a real powerhouse of energy. And this is what I find with all the female entrepreneurs. They are juggling so many things. She has a couple of children, she's running her business, she's giving back to the local community and helping to empower young people. And then we together have launched on the LinkedIn today, actually, the Spicy Society, which is actually 6 of us, so 5 of my clients and myself, who will be actually showing at International Food Exhibition at the end of this month. And all of those women are running the business, trying to get into big brand distribution. Most of them, with one exception, have children of kind of school age and are doing other things as well. And it's just amazing. And being able to empower getting back. I mean, Claudia, for example, said, well, you've paid for the stand, we've given us the stand, I'll do all the legwork. So she's done all the design, she's done all the banners, the others are paying for it. The collaboration between women is just inspirational. I'm quite overwhelmed with how this project's gone. Actually, it's gone beyond my wildest dreams, which was like, I'll just stick some products on a table at IFE and talk about it. And it's turned into this real strong collaboration with each woman doing, one woman's going to be doing all the driving on the Sunday to get the stuff. And it's not because I said, right, who's going to do the driving? Everybody's come forward with their proposals of things that they would like to help with. And yeah, I'm quite blown away with it, actually. Power, female power, it's really strong.
Excellent, Karen. Just how, because I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will be watching this kind of thinking, how on earth do you get involved in something like that? I mean, is it were you approached about it? How, if people wanted to do something similar themselves, how would they find something like that?
For the IFE piece?
Yeah.
It was an idea that I had because I had the stand, and I just started working actually with a lady who's not food. She makes a product called My Spike, which is it's like a something you would put in the oven to make kebabs, but it's designed so brilliantly that it cuts down on energy use. And she's never been in retail at all. And of course, all my background's food. And I was kind of like, oh gosh, I'm not sure how to do this. And then I was like, well, why don't we just surround her with all these other condiments? And suddenly you've got a really interesting story, and we can bring her into food without her having to sell food products. So, but how do you put it together? It's just thinking about who would collaborate well with you. If you've got a brand, who else would work well with you? And to be fair, most of these brands, the 5 I'm working with, are in some ways competing, because obviously they're all condiments, but on the other hand, they've got the same customer base. So it's actually finding that commonality, and also thinking, well, who can I help? And I always say with networking or anything like that, it's not about what's in it for me, what can I do for others? And then, so how can you help the other people that you collaborate with to make something bigger? Because the sum of the parts is definitely bigger.
Amazing, Karen. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for being with us. Tamera, I'm going to come on to you, and if you can give us a little bit about your story with Gongcha and Nando's before, and then also the topic of female empowerment, economic empowerment specifically, that would be great.
Great, thanks so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Tamera Campbell, and I'm currently the Chief People Officer for Gongcha Global. Similar to Juliett, I've been there for a short time, just less than a year. And before that, I worked for 12 years between Nando's and the family investment house that owns Nando's, in a range of Chief People Officer roles, but also leading social impact and sustainability. And so across that journey through Yellowwoods, Nando's, and into Gongcha, I've met an incredible group of women who've very, very inspiring. And last week I had the privilege of being at Gongcha's annual franchisee convention. So we're the largest bubble tea provider outside of China. We have 2,100 bubble tea stores across 24 countries in the world. And our model works off primarily a franchise base. So out of that 2,100 stores, at least just on 2,000 of those are all franchise owned. And our franchisees have the ability to sub-franchise. And so it was my first convention, and I met so many inspiring women who had taken the path of franchising in order to build a career, and have done very, very well. There were two particularly inspiring franchisees. One is our franchisee in Western Canada. Her name is Catherine Zhang. And then our franchisee in Australia is Lily Shi. And both of those individuals started out by buying one Gongcha franchise. Catherine is now running over 50 across Western Canada with her cousin. And Lily is just about to hit 150 Gongcha stores across Australia in the space of, really a short amount of time. Both, young women who took the brave path of doing something different, have moved up from being sort of very small scale entrepreneurs to owning really large businesses where they've built teams around them. And so it got me thinking a bit about how franchising is an amazing opportunity for women empowerment. And on the plane ride home, just did a little bit of thinking about what it really meant. And in the UK, 30% of all franchises are now owned by women. And that is up from 8% all the way back in 2005. So again, for just building on what Karen said, I think there's an opportunity in owning your own business to give you that flexibility to run your life, have your children, give back to the community, and build something for yourself. And certainly, I think that we're starting to see an increase in that space. I also found a really interesting statistic that 16%, which we could all argue is still too low, but 16% of all CEOs in franchising are now female, compared to about 5% in Fortune 500 companies. And so again, an amazing pathway to kind of realize your dreams and set up a very, very viable business. And certainly if I look at Lily Shi, our franchisee in Australia, she won Franchisee of the Year. She's built an incredibly solid team and done phenomenal things for her own brand in that market. Yeah.
Got to actually take myself off mute. Tara, that's amazing. Thank you very much for that. Was it 16% that you said, or 60%?
16. 16. Yeah, 16. So we've still got a long way to go. But triple what exists in sort of Fortune 500 companies.
And was there any reason given for that? Because that's 3 times as many as in 2005. Was there any reason given as to why that was, do you think?
No, I mean, there wasn't in the article that I read, but I mean, I think certainly, I would say a couple of things. Number one, that a lot of it is about, being able to be the person who creates your own destiny. So being able to start small and build it up. And then thirdly, probably lower barriers to entry in terms of just capital as well. So, you know, a lot written about, and certainly in our model at Gongcha, there are quite low barriers to entry. And I think you're seeing, you know, the impact of that also in terms of the take-up rate. And we have 900 stores in our Korean business, of which there are many, many female entrepreneurs, but they own 1 to 2 stores. And again, I think those are equally as inspiring stories as, you know, the Lilies and the Catherines who have, you know, grown them into these, you know, very, very big countrywide recognizable brands.
Excellent. And just flashing back very quickly, so I know very much that you're at Gongcha building the people culture there now at the moment, but within Nando's, you know, the culture is one thing that kind of like, you know, the business is very much known for. Can you give us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you drove through there that you think really managed to affect and nurture kind of female development?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you run in hospitality, it is certainly you have an entry-level pool that is incredibly diverse from a gender perspective. And the real challenge in hospitality is how you make sure that you have sufficient numbers of young women who will progress up into management level to, you know, to a GM level or a, you know, restaurant level manager. And so certainly a couple of things, I think a lot of work that we did there and certainly are doing at Gongcha too, around how we make sure that we remove the barriers to progression around that, you know, from an entry level up into kind of a store or restaurant manager. And there's multiple things that you can look at. The most basic is around flexibility around shift. So the sort of unsociable hours of hospitality are often the reason why women drop out, particularly if they are primary caregiver for their children or, you know, an aging adult. And then the second thing, very, very deliberate mentoring programs and partnerships with organizations that really supported young women to develop. And certainly in our UK business have gone very far with that. I can talk a little bit about, you know, the sort of social investment that was also made into looking at how you get people who are not included in the formal economy into the formal economy. And certainly was a highlight of my career when I worked for the sort of family investment house. I built and ran a youth employment accelerator down in South Africa. And we placed young people between the age of 18 and 24 who had no prior work experience, who came from abject poverty, into formal work. And the way in which we did that was by creating networks which didn't exist in those poor communities into formal work. And then the second thing was to ensure that we mentored, right, around socializing individuals for work. And what was really fascinating when it was a high volume youth employment accelerator. So by the 3rd year, we were placing 10,000 young people per year. And that project has now done over 1 million placements. But when you look at it, when we looked at it in the first 3 years, just by chance, without working it, over 60% of our applicants were from the female pool. And again, we hadn't worked it, but what it showed us was young women were hungry for those networks. They couldn't always feed their children off the social welfare payout, and they were really eager and hungry to work. And so we did a lot about how we were able to drive them into formal employment and then work with those employers to build programs to make sure that you hold them in and progress them.
Those numbers are absolutely incredible. Congratulations on that. Thank you, Tamera. Much appreciated. Now, changing sector ever so slightly, I'm going to come on to Tanja, who's looking at this from an aviation perspective, and it would be great to hear some of your story, Tanja.
Absolutely.
Oh, and a little introduction to yourself as well. Sorry.
I will. So my name is Tanja Schmidt. I'm working for the last 15 years, more or less, in the travel industry, primarily in aviation, and have a really, really deep passion about it. And so prior to me now joining the fitness industry, I was very much into the pilot education globally. And what I could see there is that in aviation, obviously, there's not that many females in leadership roles, let alone being a pilot. But ultimately, you can see in a lot of parts of the world, the population will be less than 1% of all the pilots for certain airlines. So the pool of females coming into certain jobs is really minimal. And also when you look out into recruiting female pilots, there's just not much, right? So I thought this was a very, very inspirational thing for me to see how can I get in there, right? So when there's just men, there must be as well an avenue for women to climb up the ladder. And what I could truly see is that there's a lot of opportunities, but often enough, a lot of young women or girls have no idea what is actually the art of the possible, right? So the industry already, or certain parts, certain sectors are pretty much closed off more or less for men. But that's not really true, right? And sometimes you just need to come forward and open up different doors and possibilities and just give a little bit of a glimpse into what a lot of women can do, right? And so for me, over the last 15 years, it was really, really important to create the seat at the table for a lot of young women or girls to see that they can go into engineering professions, that they can actually go into becoming a pilot themselves, right? Flying and becoming a captain at one point in time. And so I thought there must be different avenues to establish it. Like often enough, it's really hard to bring people in when they're already an adult. What I could truly see is really starting much earlier, like enabling girls going into STEM programs, making sure that they see how exciting different industries can be. And then, enabling them and inspiring them to start this journey as well.
That's quite a story, Tanja. And can you tell us a little bit about your current company and how that links into the aviation side of things?
Well, it doesn't really link into the aviation at all. So my whole career was pretty much about enabling talent and enabling people across different industries and parts. And so my background is in HR, but primarily in learning and development. So when I was working now, before I joined Aurum, I was working for Boeing. Before that, I was working for Qatar Airways, lived 10 years in the Middle East, have worked for Lufthansa and big brands, right? And I thought maybe this is a good avenue now to take a step back from the big corporates and go into like a startup, seeing how things can be from like a smaller perspective, right, and making a difference. So my impact there is really on the learning side, enabling franchisees, enabling like female franchisees to be successful, right? Making sure they're getting the right tools and as well the right economic understanding on how to run their own businesses, and then really empowering them. Not just going in with a standard, right, but also creating programs that enable them to learn at their times. Exactly as said before, a lot of them have kids, they have families, they have to take care of a lot of things. How can we create learning programs that actually help them to increase their competencies and their skills in their time when they need it, right? And so we can truly see that there's an increase in economic power in the way that they can handle their businesses. But creating a framework that allows them to be successful.
Amazing. Tanja, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for being with us today. Much appreciated. Keeping with the international theme, I'm going to move over to Sharon. And Sharon, if you give us a little introduction to yourself, and if you can maybe lead us off, because you're obviously based in Dubai and have got extensive experience working across the Middle East, it would be really great to hear across that region what's being done around female empowership and leadership.
Certainly. Thank you, Christian, and happy International Women's Day, everyone. Pleasure to be on the panel with such a great leading powerhouse of ladies, and thank you for inviting me. So I'm based in Dubai, and I'm the Managing Director, Regional Head of Property for Standard Chartered Bank in the region. I look after the Middle East and Africa, and I can really relate to what some of the ladies have been saying, reference mentoring across these areas. I've been overseas since 1999, not always in the banking industry. I've been based in Singapore, Thailand, started off in blue light services, so very male-dominated arena. Also then came out to Dubai And just to put a reference there, the Middle East has witnessed a remarkable rise in female empowerment, and particularly in leadership roles. Women are really carving their paths to success now, and mettle being tested and raising to that challenge. And they're becoming real champions of change, and that's great to see. And if you think about the huge changes in Dubai, UAE in itself, and also in Saudi Arabia, which is really leading a massive transformation program there. So, you know, the environment and the industry I work in at the moment, globally, we've got 8% that are chief executives or in that leadership band bracket C-suite. And 3% of that is in banking, which those numbers are really, really low. And people were talking earlier about mentoring in the bank. You know, this year's Inspire Inclusion really resonates with us. And that's absolutely our superpower in bringing women, young ladies through those leader programs to promote them within the ranks and bring them into leadership roles. So for us, mentoring is absolutely key. And when you look across Africa as well, that's a real region in itself. We obviously encourage and promote within the business. We've had a lot of our colleagues come over from Africa, come to Dubai, go to Singapore. So we're a global bank offering that multi-international opportunities to women and ladies within our forums, within our businesses and within our business streams. So incredibly proud of that. Just to go on a bit of a different tangent, we've also got a huge partnership with Liverpool Football Club. And that in itself, bringing women and young girls into sport and keeping that arena going, keeping them involved in their communities, because it's where you have that stakeholder, that networking is so powerful. The power of that engagement within those communities, giving them those skills, giving them as entrepreneurial skills and meeting people of like-minded to enable them and to show them that there's no ceiling anymore and whatever you want to do is absolutely possible. So Christian, happy to take any questions and hand back to you.
That's amazing. Thank you, Sharon. I mean, obviously, like, you know, having worked across the Middle East for such a period of time, you know, we do quite a lot of work in the market as well. And we found specifically post-COVID that things have really opened up, you know, for female leaders, for kind of like other kind of like, you know, ethnic groups. What do you think's driving that? And what initiatives have you seen companies putting in place to improve things for people?
I think there's a lot of inclusion now. Women are feeling incredibly empowered. If you think about Standard Chartered Bank and the programs we've got a female tech program in place, focusing on obviously just females, but giving them that toolkit. They're being mentored. I think there's more opportunity, particularly in the Middle East, that the doors are wide open now, and I don't think there's any barriers at all. Women in general are very, very complementary, collaborative, more engaging with each other. You know, there's a big sense of women's networks out in the Middle East as well. And I think there's just so much more opportunity, and women are grasping onto that and really making most of it. So I think in short and in summary, that inclusion, that inspiration, and that coming together with the network is really powerful.
Amazing. Sharon, thank you very much for being with us. Much appreciated. We'll come back to you shortly. Cheila, sorry, last but definitely not least, with probably the most impressive wardrobe I've seen in a long time. Thank you very much for being with us today. Could you give us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then if you can talk to us a little bit about your leadership model and how you inspire women of different generations, that would be great. You're on mute. You're on mute.
So I am from Africa. I am from Angola. We refugees to Portugal, colonies, you know, usual story. And nevertheless, I saw how people were treated, how we were treated, and how they were told us what we should be or not be. So since little, you are told if you're a Black person, you'll be a cleaner, you'll be this, you'll be that. And I decided that everything they told me, I would go completely the opposite. So I built schools in Africa. I have done around 150 schools with Africa Revival, where I try, believe it or not, people will give you money for diamonds, but no one wants to give me money for free water for fresh water, which is shocking. The corruption is unbelievable. But we try to give really education, books, all of it to these kids. For me, it's really, and a lot of girls as well, I mean, if you see the time they have to walk from home to school, it's shocking. And what we take for granted, it's a privilege for them. It's shocking. And so for me, as an African woman, I really wanted to coach and empower all these young girls who are always told they can't do it. And the way I found this, first, I was in hospitality. I built Soho House, Pizza East, most of the restaurants in London. And then I was lucky enough to come across Debbie Vosco and Anna Jones, the founders of Albright, and I built Albright in London, LA, New York, and that is what gave me the inspiration to start LUUMA, because I thought, in the Western world, we have a voice. We can, we talk about abortion, menopause, the period, all of these things. But if you go to Middle East, or if you go even in Africa, half of this is not spoken yet. And my goal with LUUMA is to create a virtual club where it's a safe environment where women can connect, communicate, help each other, support each other, and with that also create masterclass events, coaching, mentoring, all of them virtually. At the beginning, I had the idea of, I was a little bit delusional and I thought I could go and get a big building until I realized how much it costs. And then I think the virtual world after COVID, it worked with Albright and I think would work well. And right now, LUUMA seems to have huge interest. A lot of women, big women, want to speak and collaborate with us. And for me, I always say, of course, money matters, but for me, it's really personal. I really want to empower these young girls who are being told they cannot do something, and they can. And if I could, and I come from poverty for nothing, they surely can. And for me, nothing is more inspirational. That nothing gives me more pleasure than to coach a little group of people, but not only girls, boys as well, and even on my teams in restaurants, in hotels, mentoring and coaching is very important. And only now is becoming even stronger, as we know, with Otolo and all of it, that we're doing it. But that's my vision. My vision is Africa. Is if I could, I would take over the world and just inspire, coach, and mentor people if I could, and build schools and give them better lifestyle if I could. And that's my dream.
I think that is what this International Women's Day is all about, Cheila. So thank you very much for joining us. I think that's brilliant. I'm going to stay with you on that point about kind of like a female leader who's inspired you, or who you look for, kind of like, who really kind of like, has done that for you, and then also kind of like, maybe a top tip for companies that are looking to improve their diversity strategy, Cheila.
I have to say, I think the founders were a big change in my life, Debbie Vosco and Anna Jones, because it was a switch in my brain of, you think everything is so difficult. You are brainwashed since you're young that everything is so difficult to get. And they actually introduced me, or, teach me, educate me how it was possible to do something like that. So I admire the two of them. And they always told me, if I can't sit in a table, Cheila, go and build your own table. And that's what I've been doing all along. And the way of, for your second question, did you mean motivating people or how you manage people?
It can be either. It can be either how you inspire people.
I think right now, I don't know if, I'm sure all of you in this group know what a mess hospitality is. We have no staff, no one wants to work, it's a disaster. And I think the only way is by coaching, mentoring, giving, empower them, showing them that just being a waiter is more than that. You can start as a waiter, as a KP, and end up as a general manager. And I think more power you give to them, more power they will feel of the company. They shouldn't feel like they work for us. They should feel like they work with us, is the way I believe. And I always tell them, work hard, be a leader, never be a victim, and surround yourself with the positive people, with the right people, is what I tell them. And I think that's the way. And for you to retention now with the staff, it has to be like that. If they don't feel they're being taught, if they don't feel it's not, a progression for the future, they will leave you. If I have to hire 4 bartenders, I will have to hire 14 because I already know the second day they all left. And this, it's just this. It's what it is. And the way we figured it out with Ivy actually was about mentoring, putting like master classes for cocktails, colleges for, just motivate them is the only way, is what I believe.
Cheila, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to link back to Tamera, who's also, I think, got a comment to make as well. So Tamera, if you want to make your comment and then maybe your inspirational person and a top tip, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I actually wanted to build on, what all the wonderful speakers here have talked today about mentoring. And one of the observations that I made when we were dealing with sort of young people in this Youth Employment Accelerator, that mentoring is powerful for so many reasons. You acquire skills, you get somebody who enables you to kind of elevate out some of the debates. But most importantly, it's about networks and how you are able to create networks over time for people who either have them or don't have them. And I recall all those years ago, there were 2 powerful things that I learned. The first one is that there are 5 ways in which you access work, and accessing work or economic opportunity. It's where you went to school, where you went to college or university, where your parents worked, where your community works, and where you worked before. And so if many of us, may have great networks there, many of us may have very poorly developed networks there. But what mentorship does is it gives you access into a broader set of networks. And it allows you to think about how you're really able to build from there. But it takes huge courage to get to sometimes make that first step. My inspiration was definitely that 60% cohort of young women, frankly, all 100% of those young people, because they had trauma, they had challenges, they had almost no resources to put their lives together, but somehow they managed to find that opportunity. They saw a shining light somewhere, and they just had the tenacity to keep going. And so I think what running that project for 5 odd years did for me was to really make me realize that life and the opportunity that lies ahead of you is not a straight path, and actually taking a windy route to what makes you happy and successful is often, filled with a rich set of people along the way who can help you along that journey. And having the courage to say, I'd like to access that help is often what we don't do. And it's the power of what mentorship really gives us.
I think that's brilliant comments, Tamera. And your inspirational person yourself and top tip?
So my inspiration was all those young people who found their way into work. I mean, there was one particular young woman who, while she was with us, had an absolutely traumatic experience. And we asked her whether she wanted to drop out of our program and come back in 3 months' time. And she looked at us as if we were crazy, and she said, not at all, because what I'm aiming for is that in 3 years' time, I'm going to have my independence, going to have my own job, earning my own money, and that will never happen to me again. And it wasn't 3 years, it was about 18 months later, she sent us a picture of her car and the fact that she'd moved out and, you know, she had got her life together. And, you know, without going into the details of that, it was such extreme trauma. She could have literally collapsed and lapsed out, and she didn't. She found the internal strength to keep going. And I always reflect on that and think, you know, in those situations, it makes our lives feel a lot different. And so there's always the strength to keep going. The top tip is just be brave, right? Be brave and go, you know, the talent is found in very, very unusual places, and, you know, be brave enough to hunt for it in a place which you don't often expect. And so it's opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you very much for doing with us, Tamera. Some really great points. I'm going to come back to Karen next.
Hi. Tamera, it's really interesting you talking about the five. I've written them down, actually, the 5 places where you come from, and I've got a whole list of women who've inspired me. But listening to you, I wanted to actually talk about my daughter, who is 27 now. She's a doctor, and at about the age of 14, she says, "I want to be a doctor." I was a single mom. Obviously, you know, I have my own business. I wasn't poor, but she was at a state school. And I put her in touch with somebody who was a consultant at one of the London hospitals, who turned around to her and said, "I won't bother, you haven't got a chance of getting in. You know, you're from a state school. You know, most doctors have got doctors in the family. I'd do something else." And I was really, really not happy about this. And I said to her, I said, "Look, if you want to be a doctor, let's work out what you need to do to make it happen." And so I suppose she was probably one of my first little mentees. So, you know, she went and applied to do work experience. She went and worked, so that was in a hospital. She went and worked at a care home to get care home experience. And I said to her, and she obviously was intelligent as well. At the same time, her school became, I can't remember what the Ofsted baddest result was, but basically, and I said, well, and her friends all got together and they actually worked together to get their A-levels. And so to me, and, you know, obviously, to cut a long story short, she got into UCL, which is one of the best universities. She's done her thing and is now progressing as an F2. And I think having somebody who just says, yes, you can do it is really important. And I'm sure there are a lot of people, and certainly a lot of the conversations around overseas, and maybe women who are in environments where they're not encouraged to perform. I think to be able to find somebody like a mentor, for young people, Prince's Trust is really good. I used to volunteer for Prince's Trust, to just get out there and go and find other people who say, well, actually, yes, you can do it. I think that is my tip from listening to you. Thank you for that. It was interesting.
That's amazing, Karen. Thank you very much for being with us, and pass your best to your daughter. Tanja, coming back onto you.
Sure. I would say, though, some of the women that have inspired me the most were those in very high leadership roles, and as I said earlier, in a very male-dominated industry. And often enough, what I saw in the past is that women have kind of copied the mechanism or the way they behaved and they talked to adopt to the environment with all the men that they were in. And actually, those women, they just stayed true to themselves. They had still the feminine touch to it. They had a lot of empathy, and the environments they created were so much more powerful. They had really the teams behind them, and team members really willing to go the extra mile. So they really did not adopt and try to be kind of like a copy version of the male environment they were in. But I think that would be one of the biggest advices or tips I would give young women too, right? You do not have to copy anyone else. You can totally stay yourself and be absolutely successful. Have a team with you that really would go the extra mile. And often enough, that's really something that's absolutely missing. The human touch, the empathy, not being like, again, one of many, but being just true to yourself. And yeah, as I said, these women have been really successful. They kept climbing up the ladder, and they have been absolutely inspirational for me too.
Excellent. Tanja, thank you so much for joining us. Sharon, coming on to yours next.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, listening to this call is really inspiring. And every day I work with really energetic, powerful women who have massive can-do attitude and just don't give up. And for me, they all inspire me. And I do everything I can to make a really inclusive environment to enable our people to grow as well. And not just female, you know, our male as well, and people with disabilities. So there's a lot out there, and life can be incredibly hard. So for me, it's always being kind, going the extra mile to support people. And I just wanted to touch on a point that was made earlier about in the Middle East and Africa, some of the topics are not raised. One of the things the bank is doing as well is a big menopause program, giving them full medical cover. And so all of that is starting to open up. And it's really important that we understand that you know, the power of reaching out and ladies talking to each other is really key. But my key point, and it came from my father, was, you know, fly high and follow your dreams. You know, nothing is impossible. So just keep going.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Sharon. Thank you very much for that. And we started with Juliett, so we shall finish with Juliett. Sorry, it's been a while.
It's been fantastic listening to all of these amazing ladies on this call today. So thank you to everyone. But I guess my advice to people would be, it's really simple. You know, there is absolutely no mountain too high that we all can't, you know, aspire to be at. We all have a voice, and it's important that we use our voice and support each other. And my last one would be something that somebody said to me years ago: just be comfortable in your own skin and just be brave enough to be yourself. And that's probably sometimes easier said than done, but it's super important, because, you know, if you are yourself, you know, you will gain the accreditations that you want to get just by purely being yourself. And I think to your point on who's inspired me, I think, you know, absolutely every woman on this call has definitely inspired me today. But I'd say that the person that inspired me in my early career absolutely has to be Aisling Kemp from JDM Food Group. And I know I wouldn't be in this role if it wasn't for her.
Amazing. Juliett, thank you very much for joining us. Cheila, Tamera, Karen, Sharon, and Tanja, thank you all very much for joining us today. I know you're all very busy people, so giving up an hour and coming to speak has been fantastic. Wishing you all a very happy International Women's Day. And if you want to come down to Royal Society of Arts today, it might be a little bit of a schlep for you, Sharon, but by all means, you're here in spirit. Thanks very much, everyone.